Okay, I guess that we could start with our session scheduled at 11, related to the new track operations. I kindly ask you to close, please, the door in order to reduce a bit the noise here, and starting on time, and to avoid stealing time to our speakers. So, good morning and welcome, everybody. I'm the Italian Navy Commander Stefano Biondi. I have been working here at the CCD-COE since 3 years as a cyber intelligence researcher, and today host for this panel, Darkweb, any impacts for military operations. So far, we had the opportunity to attend panels related to cyber domain from different perspectives, the strategic vision rather than the legal implications, or even the technical challenges and opportunities. But we are definitely missing a pillar, operations. Yesterday, we had a great talk in the afternoon with General Petraeus and Dr. Lin, focused on cyber operations and information operations. Today, we're going to continue on this track, and we will have 3 panels, operations-oriented. The first one, this one, focused on Darkweb. And in the afternoon, we're going to have other 2 panels, always for topics related to operations. The first will be social network analysis and information warfare oriented, and the third one related to the implication of the use of artificial intelligence, the weaponization of artificial intelligence within military systems. But back to our panel today now. We perfectly know that in the military domain, one of the main one of the main constraints is the collection gathering. Gathering information, good information, is a must in order to plan operations and to fill the gap to plan these operations and to get a good situational awareness picture. So today, with this session, we will try to focus on these kind of considerations, and the session itself will provide some insight into the discovery of possible threats for military operations within the dark web, discussing feasible weaknesses in this hidden area, and identify possible solutions to mitigate the risks connected to with military operations. And from the intel perspective, trying to understand if dark web is a good source for intel purposes, military intelligence. So, of course, for achieving all these kind of questions, I will not be here alone on the stage. With me, from left to right, Commander Dr. Robert Koch from the Bundeswehr Cyber Security Center, Dr. Andrea Melegari from Expert System, and Mr. John Gwinnap from the NATO Intelligence Fusion Center. Before starting with the talks, a quick remark about the organization of this panel. We're going to have 3 talks, 20 minutes each. And in the end of each speech, we're going to have 5–10 minutes question time for each of our experts here. So let's try to maximize the opportunity to have those brilliant experts here on the stage with us today, and try to raise questions, intelligence and operations oriented. So, just a quick information about the panel itself. This panel has been thought to enlarge the vision of some questions that have been raised in a paper that has been selected for our proceeding. And you're going to have the proceeding book in your welcome package. And this, and of course, this paper is in this book. The author of this paper is Commander Robert Koch, and today he is with us to provide the contents of this document, of this research, and the outcomes that he got in the end of this research. Robert is a General Staff Officer of the Federal Armed Forces and Senior Research Assistant and Lecturer in Computer Science at the Universität der Bundeswehr and the University of Bonn. Main area of interest for Robert are system security and intrusion detection in encrypted networks and artificial intelligence. The title of the paper and this presentation, of course, are Hidden in the Shadow, the Dark Web, a growing risk for military operations. The paper analyzes the technical base of the Dark Web and examines the possibilities of de-anonymization, driving a discussion of the potential risk for military operations. So please, Robert, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, when you're thinking about the dark web, you often have these typical pictures in the mind. For example, the trading with drugs on respective markets, selling of guns, and for example, we had during the Munich shootings a few years ago, also the information that the used weapon was also bought via the dark web. So typically very bad things. Also Playpen was a very famous example when in 2015 the FBI took down that web page which contained a lot of child pornography. After 2 years from 2017, the statistics are nearly 600 arrests corresponding with that takedown of the web page. But before talking about the dark web in some more detail, we have to have a look at the definitions, because a lot of things are very often mixed in that area. So the ClearNet is everything you can reach with your normal browser and you are doing a Google or a Bing search. Everything these engines, these crawlers can find. The deep web, that's much, much bigger than the actual ClearNet. Everything that is connected to the internet. Think, for example, about your intranet at your company and some private data at home of your computers and stuff like that. So normally that should be inaccessible by a search engine, normally, of course. So that's the deep web. The darknet, very often mixed with the dark web. The darknet are the IP addresses out there which are routable but not in use. So your computer needs IP addresses to send the messages through the internet. And some of these addresses are not in use. And these, usable but not in use, these are building the darknet. And the dark web, finally, that are the websites which are hosted within so-called overlay networks, so a specific structure on top of the internet, which is normally only accessible by using special software like, for example, Tor. Also, the size is quite interesting. Tor is the most famous dark web which is available. There are some more, but that's the most famous and the biggest one. And if you have a look to the numbers, about a timeline of 2 years, you can see, okay, maybe about 50,000 pages going up recently to about 100,000 in average. You can also identify some very sharp increases in the numbers here in the beginning, only for a one short time, and then 2 plateaus for a longer time. That quite often means that not 100,000 guys are putting new content to the web to the exactly same time, but that some nasty is going on. Some attack is happening. The network is under heavy surveillance, so maybe a research institute or an agency is trying to do something more, or maybe someone is using the infrastructure to do attacks and therefore registering new onion domains. In fact, the dark web itself, as you can see, is quite small. And I put the numbers to the graph over there. And you see the ClearNet, so the stuff you can browse, in red, and the dark web in blue. And it's in blue, but the resolution of the beamer is too low, so you can't see the small part of it. So I give you the numbers. In January this year, the ClearNet has about 1.9 billion websites. The dark web has about 105,000, and they are not with content, maybe half of it. So the dark web is only about 0.005 of the amount of web pages out there. So it's really, really small. So actually, you have that tip of the iceberg, and you should flip that iceberg. Also interesting, a lot of bad things is going on there, but a lot of good police work is done. So on a regular basis, illegal services are shut down. One example, the Hansa Bay. That was a screenshot when the market was closed down, and I like the humor of our friends from the Netherlands that did a great job there. So you can even access a link with details about the arrests going on, and there are links to the courts at trial, so they are providing all the information and sending out a clear message, hey, we will catch you even if you are working in the dark web. And also the identified bias are noticed there, so giving a warning call, don't do that any longer. So a lot of police work is going on there. So if we are thinking about important and sensitive information which may inflict military missions, we really have to think about how secure is the dark web. Would you really use such a mean to do actions that may inflict military operations? So first I will give you a very short look how Tor is working. So in principle, your computer is selecting 3 other machines, you know all of them, and then you build encrypted channels to everybody of these computers. And then you are sending messages to them, and the other guys only know the predecessor and the successor. So your computer knows all, but the other computers only know the predecessor and the successor. So if a message is going in an anonymized way out of the Tor network to the regular internet, the exit point, the last computer in the row, knows only the address where it should go in the internet and where it's coming from the middle guy, but not more information. So your IP address is faded out, and nobody is able to identify you. On the other hand, there are a lot of possibilities to do some de-anonymization attacks. 3 basic kinds can be differentiated. So the first one is if you really have vulnerabilities in Tor itself. So the software that provides these overlay networks or the respective protocol. An important example some time ago was the so-called relay early traffic confirmation attack. That was a change in the protocol that was necessary, but there was some stuff in there that you can exploit it to do a de-anonymization of the user. That was used in real life, and as soon as it was identified publicly, it was fixed. These errors are quite rare, but they happen. So errors in Tor itself, very, very dangerous if you are trying to get a good anonymity. Also on a technical base, but not focusing on the Tor software itself, is vulnerabilities of used software. Normally you are using the Firefox browser to access the Tor network. You can just download it and start it, that's all. So very easy. And the most attack vectors are going to that additional software, the browser plugins. So for example, the FBI used a technique they called network investigative technique to identify some users. In fact, that was quite funny because it was a very old exploit they used from a Metasploit service, publicly available, but because nobody used it, it was already retired. At least it seems it was useful in that area. So basically, it was a Flash plugin running in the browser, and you were able, with that little sheet of code over there, to identify the IP address of the user. So vulnerability of the browser, respectively a plugin, but not of the Tor network itself. The FBI, that was a Playpen case, used that attack. Took over the Playpen web server and the dark web and was running it for 13 days to collect the IP addresses of the visitors. And after they finished, they had about 8,700 computers hacked in 120 countries. So some background information from the numbers from the beginning. Another attack possibility is very interesting, only the scheme here. Think about you are accessing the network and your smartphone is on your table. And we have some stuff in the advertisement industry that's called ultrasound cross-device tracking. Because they want to connect all your devices to you, you can nowadays embed a sound file into an advertisement that is inaudible for human. But it is played when you are opening that advertisement. And it's unique for the computer the advertisement is sent to. So the idea is you have the ad, the sound is played, you can't hear it, but your mobile phone is on your table beside you. The mobile phone can hear it, and it's sending back that unique code to the server that generated the code. And the server knows where it sent that code, so it can connect the two devices. And normally, you are not anonymized with your smartphone, so your smartphone tells the IP address that is used for accessing the internet from home. So a very, very interesting attack based on something which is an indirect shortcoming, but no direct vulnerability. Third, of course, human error, the most often one. A very funny example, one drug dealer who used the dark web in the United States was caught because the post officers get suspicious that he put the parcels all the time with latex gloves on to the post office, not to have the fingerprints on it. And before they informed the police, they checked the guy and they identified, okay, he's selling the drugs which he's dealing over the dark web. So human error is definitely the most common error when de-anonymization is possible in the dark web. There are multiple other opportunities. For example, only giving a very light idea about that, I did a research running about 1.5 years, analyzing how the routing is working in the dark web and how are the exit nodes used if you are using it for anonymization. And as you can see, the blue part over there in the graph, that are exit nodes that are currently used. That means you have a very low number, only about 1,000 exit nodes in average in the dark web, in the Tor network. And from these, only a very limited part is used. That means if you want to survey these exit nodes, it's quite easy. You only have to focus on a very limited number. Also, if you are thinking about the capabilities of the NSA, you will for sure know the X-key score. So that are definitions of, for example, IP addresses or terms they are looking for in the internet. And if they can see that in the traffic, they are going into the connection and you can do different things. And as you can see, if you have a look into the definitions, as far as we know from the leaks, there are, for example, things like tails. And tails is a distribution which is enabling Tor and trying to give the maximum security to the user. So everything that is going out of the computer is routed through the Tor network. But first, you have to download the software. And that rule that is defined there is exactly looking if someone is connecting to the website and trying to download the software. So if you are able to intervene into that connection during the download process and, for example, do a rerouting and giving another download version, you can have a compromise even already by the download. So a lot of possibilities to attack the security and the anonymity of the Tor web. If we have a look at the range of services and data we can see there, a lot of studies highlight that there's a very large proportion of illicit activities. For example, it's number 44%, 57%, or very shocking numbers. One research some time ago presented that 80% of the traffic in the dark web is related to child pornography. These estimations are really difficult to make in real world. So measurements which are used to get these ideas, they are not possible in a direct way, only in indirect means. And you really have to think about how are the hidden service directories working. So for example, a request that is quite rare will produce more traffic than a request that is provided very often to the service directories. That is often not handled the right way in these evaluations. Another aspect maybe missed in some of these works is there are a lot of crawlers, law enforcement agencies, child protection agencies, who are also crawling the web and generating traffic. And therefore, it's quite difficult to say that really such high amount is really an illicit traffic part. I have some statistics over there from the Internet Watch Foundation. They are going through the web, the ClearNet and the dark web, and trying to bring down as many URLs with child pornography as possible. And you see the numbers. The URLs over there, that is in the ClearNet. And the dark web, the percentage they found there is very little, 0.something%. So again, these numbers are very, very limited, while most of the stuff is just in the ClearNet. And interesting to know, one of the most active hidden services at all is the Facebook web page. So you can access Facebook as an anonymous service too, and that's one with the most traffic in the dark web at all. The trading amounts in the dark web can be quite high, $500,000 a day and even more, and that's mainly for drugs and financial fraud. We can also identify, and it's more important when thinking about military missions again, personally identifiable information. And there are some analysis out there which identified that the largest footprint generated by these personal identifiable information is for the US Navy, US Army, and groups that are closely linked to the defense area. So may be dangerous. Of course, there are other services offered, for example, malware frameworks or crime as a service, where you just pay some money to some guys and they will hack a website for you and things like that. That's all possible, definitely. If you have a closer look to the data, we can identify that some confidential data is in there. Normally, the classification level is not too high, but it can be interesting data. There are sometimes sensitive information available on different projects or investigations, but typically from random hacks or leaks. So if you want to take or find information to target a specific operation, that may be quite difficult because the normal data is more random and not useful for that. Also, things like system access and access credentials, we can find that in the dark web too, to buy it. But also, on a very random base. So it's quite difficult to say, okay, I have the network X and I need access credentials for that. You can only try to engage a hacker that he's doing that one. Things like SCADA systems and other credentials are also available, but very, very rare. So these are very low numbers. So most data is personally identifiable information. And if you think about that, it's quite obvious that the government has the largest footprint because they just have so many employees. If you have a look to the number, the number of the US forces, including the reserve over there, in some nearly 2.5 million people. And the average Fortune 500 company has about 50,000 people. The biggest one about 400,000 something. So the governmental area is much bigger with respect to the people who are working there. So it's just normal that the footprint will be bigger because the personally identifiable information is from random hacks, from Facebook to something. And on a statistical base, it's very logical that we have bigger footprints for the governmental services over there because of the number of the employees. Of course, also whistleblowers are using the Tor network if they want to expose higher classified material, but normally you are using only services like SecureDrop or Global Leaks, which prevent your good anonymity, but they are not going to sell that stuff over the dark web. So only using it to have anonymized connection to the media, but not working or selling that on the dark web. So most important is that the data may not be useful to directly endanger a selected mission. Because the network is very heavily surveyed, a lot of undercover agents are doing their job there, and you also have a lot of scams. So you can't be really sure that the information that you are buying there is correct. There's a lot of honey tokens and honey data in there. That's a very good thing from a security aspect. And it's not so easy to build up reputation systems. In the area of drug trafficking, that's quite easy. Think about eBay. So these dark web platforms have reputation systems nowadays too. So if you are trading drugs on a daily basis, you have a lot of votes if you are doing a good or a bad job. So you can have a good feeling if a vendor or also a buyer is a good or a bad one, and if you will get what you are paying for. But on the other hand, that's much more difficult if you are thinking about selling or buying very high value data, because that will be typically only one time or with a very low frequency. So you don't have the chance to build up that trust in the seller as it's possible with a reputation system, for example, for the drug trafficking. Much more difficult are the indirect endangerments with personal identifiable information. Think, for example, about social engineering attacks. That can be, of course, very useful if you, for example, identify some information from the leader of a mission or something like that. You can work on that as an attacker. It can generate reputational damage for the forces, of course, and especially with looking at hybrid warfare techniques, that can be very useful, but mainly for an indirect and not targeted attack to some mission. So, very important, dark web is very often heavily overrated, both from its size and also the analysis sometimes are not too good as they are working with data with very high uncertainty. But another aspect, the way these services are working has changed not too long ago. So the version 3 of these services hidden in the dark web is much more secure and provides a much better anonymity than the older ones. And the tracking opportunities and the attack opportunities really reduced. That may increase the use of such services for also dealing information again. But we have to ask also, of course, if you set up a completely secret platform in nowhere on the dark web and you want to sell it, if nobody can find the data, who should buy it? So it's nice from that point of view that you have a perfect communication maybe out there, but if you want to deal with the data, you have to break out of that little anonymous place. So my recommendations with regard to the dark web and the information there is a continuously tracking of all parts. So the ClearNet, of course, the deep web as far as it's possible, and of course the dark web to have early identifications if some data is lost and gets leaked to these areas. Therefore, the creation of fingerprints of sensitive files and the monitoring of it, and there are services available which can help to implement that. Very powerful is the implementation of honey tokens and strategically placed decoys, so providing very real-looking data with some beacon that it's calling home if it's opened or accessed by somebody, so you get a very early indication that something is happening and you can have a closer look where are things going on and where it's coming from. And of course, the preparation and testing of action plans and guidelines. How do I have to handle detected leaks? Which procedures should I use to initiate the deletion of the data? Finally, you can also think about the use of Tor for offensive attacks, just doing the anonymization route, and then for example, doing hacking attacks and stuff like that. So it can be very interesting for the military to just monitor also exit nodes for signs of these attacks. As I said, the number is low, that's not too difficult. That may also be an opportunity. Of course, in the legal framework, it must be possible. There's much more information in the paper. I invite everybody to read it. And if you have questions, you can also come back to me on the topic later. Thank you very much.
We can definitely open the question time with Robert. Any questions from the audience, please? Okay, so I will give you some more minutes to think about some questions for Robert. I already have one. I mean, first of all, I read, of course, the whole paper first. And in the conclusion, as you said during your presentation, you talk about the data, a comprehensive data management strategy, and particularly preparation, actions plan, and testing of these procedures, strategy procedures, and could you explain a bit more in detail those kind of preparation? What do you mean more concretely?
Okay, that means be prepared what to do if such a leak is now identified. So we have different means. You have different platforms which are regularly used where the data is going when someone is offering it. So, for example, all these paste bin sites, and you can implement quite easy monitoring mechanisms for these locations just to have an idea what's going on there. So you can reduce the uncertainty to what is going on and try to identify as early as possible, oh, there's something new. And then you should have a very good idea, how to delete the stuff as far as possible. So for some providers, think about the Germany leaks, about our politicians to the beginning of the years. A lot of servers also were in Germany itself that has the data. Also in much different countries where it's more difficult to delete. But at least you should be able to delete as many of the data as possible. So trying to think about where may it be published, who is the provider, who is the internet service provider, how can I reduce the access? So who to call to have the data deleted, to maybe block an access or things like that. So really a plan where you can think about, okay, now the stuff happened, it's over there, and that are my contact points. What can I do? Of course, you will not bring it out of the internet completely, no question, but you can try to, especially in the beginning, try to reduce the spreading of the information by that.
Thank you. One more question? Yes, please, on your right.
So, Kim Hartman from CSRC UK, thank you for your talk. It was very interesting. Just a short question. So if I would summarize your talk, I would say here the message is if you're looking for really interesting information on how to spoil military operations and cyberspace operations, you wouldn't look in the dark web. So as a technical person, I know you are, where would you be looking?
I would use just the traditional Intel channels for that, because they're established for decades, and that's a way how to deal with that information. It can be that something is also leaked over the dark web, of course, but I think the chances we will find such information on the ClearNet is much higher. Maybe someone is not thinking about the risks when using Tor, that it may happen that it's appearing there, but if one is really thinking about the risk, the surveillance, the possibilities of de-anonymization, he would not use that thing, but traditional channels. So maybe the ClearNet, but more the traditional direct communication and things like that.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. I don't think any other questions, and we are running out of time for this part. Thank you very much for your clear presentation of your paper. Really appreciate. And of course, you could always approach our speakers in the end of the panel during the break to even ask him more detailed questions if you would like to do that. So now it's time for our second speaker, Dr. Andrea Malegari. Andrea is a senior executive vice president at Expert System. His daily duty is focused on intelligence and security solutions for businesses and governmental agencies. And Andrea got a huge experience in coordinating projects that use cognitive computing technologies to support strategic analysis of data. Today, with this presentation, Andrea presentation uncover dark web identities using artificial intelligence and stilometry with a live demo. We'll propose the use of artificial intelligence to increase the performance of stilometry applied to the dark web in order to detect or reveal possible threat actors acting in the net. So Andrea, please, audience is waiting for you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So my intention, as you can read in my title, is to spend much of my time in demonstrating you some live demo. Before doing that, some basic concept about the topic of my discussion. Stilometry is the application of the study of the linguistic style. Okay, so our goal is to use the style of a writer in order to identify it. It's not a new technique. Probably most of you know very well Unabomber, and stilometry played a significant role in solving this investigation. Specifically, it has been used to pinpoint the age and the geographic origin of the main suspect, so the famous Ted Kaczynski. In this specific application, we have three goals. The first one is try to attribute a text to one of the three dark web accounts you can read in the top of this slide. The second goal is to profile the prediction of the age and of the sex. So, how the system works. We have, obviously, a training data, and in this specific context, we have considered 180 texts, 60 texts for each one of the three guys you saw in the previous slide. The second step is to create a model combining two different artificial intelligence technology. The first one is Cogito technology. My company has developed this technology in the last 20 years. And the second component of the artificial intelligence technique we use is Weka, is a famous open source tool. So then we define a prediction, obviously with a confidence level, and then we test and update what we have built in the three main steps. Obviously, after the test, the update is mandatory in order to increase precision and recall. The text we have to consider, so the training data, are very strange text coming from the dark web, where you can find short text, less than 200 characters, medium text, between 200 and 500, and what we have defined long text, more than 500 characters. So let's try to understand with the live demo, as we can create the semantic parameters, the linguistic style information that we will send to Weka in order to create the prediction. For doing that, I love to show you something live. So it's not a text coming from the dark web, but it is anyway a good example of what we can do. Let's try to see if the internet connection works, because in this situation I see some problem. It's a live demo effect, obviously. Anyway, let's try to use another text in order to show you what I consider useful for this demonstration. So here we have a text, and when we process a text, Cogito extracts semantic parameters, a lot of semantic parameters. As you can see here, we are considering concepts instead of keywords. So, people, because in the text we found Donald Trump, Mike Pence, and so on. Organization, because in the text we found the Republican Party, and so on. Intention verb, decide. Form of thought, reasoning, and so on. So, what we did is exactly a very similar approach of our brain does. So, you remember during the primary school, we learned about morphological analysis, grammatical analysis, and something different. Here is what you can see. So, in the right part of the screen, you see, for example, that was is a form of the verb to be, okay? And every element you can find here has been disambiguated. So we are working using concept, and when we talk about Secretary of State, we know, the artificial intelligence know that we are talking about a foreign minister, a politician, a professional, people. So what we can do here is to extract a lot of linguistic parameters that you can use for understanding the text, the content of the text. For example, here we have extracted some relations, okay? And with the relation, you can find also the different connection, semantic connection with other entities. So, Cogito is able to extract some entities following a very clear process, which is a linguistic analysis. Coming back to the articles talking about what is going on in Israel, I would like to show you what we can extract, because the level of the parameters that you can get is much better, and for example, could include what we have named categorization. Why here we are talking about voting? Why here we are talking about parties movement? What are the people mentioned here? Can you see that here you have he? Not only Benjamin Netanyahu, but also he. And thanks to this capability, you can also create interesting connection where Benjamin Netanyahu is linked with other entities or is linked with other facts. Okay, so with the semantic analysis, you can get very interesting semantic parameters, entities, relation, emotions. Why we have success and Likud party at the same time? Mr. Netanyahu entered negotiation to form a coalition government after his Likud party won. Success. So we extract 80 different parameters correlated to emotion. Okay, so Cogito is able to do a lot of things that are correlated to the capability to understand the text. But you can also extract technical parameters that are correlated to the specific linguistic style. For example, you can say that this text talk about these verb classes. For example, a lot of linguistic communication, a lot of verbs correlated to movement. We are talking about grammatical tenses. Simple present is the number one, and just a little bit future. Or we can extract the register and slang. We can define a readability index and so on. So at the end of this process, you have a result which is a very rich set of linguistic parameters. For the specific goal, we have considered 200 linguistic parameters, probably too much. So with the linguistic parameter you have, now you can train the model using Weka. Here we have a text. Finally, we have a text that is not part of the training set, obviously. We used to create the model. It is a new text, and it is a text written by Marvin42. Let's try to understand how we can process the text using the combination of the two different tools we have combined. So here we have the text, here we have the model, and what is going on now is the analysis where Cogito extracts the semantic parameters that this text contains, and then Weka, the machine learning algorithms, try to combine the results of the parameter we have extracted. I don't want to bore you about the parameters, but here is the list of the parameters we are considering now. And for example, in the first column, you can find the specific result. And when you see the green stars, it means that this parameter matches a specific model. In this case, the model of the people that Weka is associated to the author of the text. So here we are saying that probably this is the confidence level. Probably Marvin42 wrote this text, and the confidence level is pretty good. This is not the precision. This is the confidence level coming from Weka. We are not so confident about the age. We think that is probably in the 40s, but you see 38% of confidence level is not much, and we think he's a male. Okay, so let's try to recap. We have a training set of data, 60 documents from Marvin, this grant, and Orange, the free Darkweb accounts. We have extracted the semantic parameters with Cogito. With Weka, we have created a model, and this is the result. Coming back to the slide, some comments about what we have built. So, first of all, the precision and the recall. When I talk about precision, I consider the more relevant results that the system returned us. When I consider recall, I hope to get most of the relevant result. I don't want to miss a lot of useful information. And using just 180 text, just few text, the level of precision is 78%. And also the recall is not bad. So, a good starting point, I would say. But a suggestion for you comes from the combination of stilometry and this type of goal, so the de-anonymizing programmer's task. It is a paper published on 2015. You can easily find all the information about this paper. I'm not correlated to this paper, but I would like to highlight some conclusion about this paper. So they wrote that the goal was to understand the source code authors of C++ source code. Take a look at the result. Considering 1,600 people, 94% of precision, not bad. So you can apply stilometry not only on a text written by Darkweb accounts, but it seems that also the programmers have their linguistic style. Second slide. It is easier to identify difficult programming tasks, and at the same time, the skilled programmer is something that you can identify with more precision. So, a provocation for you. They write that stilometry could be applied to malicious code. Could this technique help you just a little bit to solve the famous problem of the attribution of the malware? Again, this is a suggestion for you. I have this last slide. So, conclusion. Stilometry can be useful for you. For uncovered dark web accounts, probably, reading the paper I showed you before, also for profiling malicious code authors. Second, extracting manually 200 semantic parameters is not exactly an easy task. So the human analysis that is now the common tool, it is low and it is expensive. And my conclusion is that combining, probably in a better way, artificial intelligence technology for automatic extracting the semantic parameter and for using machine learning in order to predict the authorship using the semantic parameter could be faster and cheaper. Don't forget my last note. We are not talking about replacing human analysis. Artificial intelligence works pretty good, but now my position is that we can consider in this context to augment the human capabilities. Thank you.
So, do we have any questions for Andrea? I hope that the consideration regarding the way how to bind, using those kind of capability to bind the possible malware programmers could be really interesting for even further discussion here in our 5 minutes question. Yes, we are one. Okay, well, sorry, please.
Thank you. I do have a question. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I am here.
Sorry, but I completely...
So the question is the following.
You are in the dark side of the room, sorry.
I am in the Tor network, yeah. Okay, my question is the following. You know, it seems to me, and correct me if I am wrong, you have a kind of two major problems, issues that you solved. First is a contextual analysis and semantic analysis, and you use some semantic or conceptual graphs to identify the meaning of the text. And second part, use some statistical linguistic, keywords or to identify the attribution, who is a person. So my question is following: is overall it's a linear process? You first do semantic analysis of the text, and after that you do the attribution, or this is a kind of multi-step but iterative process that first do semantics, then do a little bit statistical analysis, get better at what understanding, and start semantic analysis in a loop?
Very good question, thank you. So our experience is in performing cognitive computing semantic analysis tools, okay? We have a limited experience in machine learning methods, but obviously we use them. My idea is that putting the text directly inside Weka cannot grant you the same level of precision. Okay, so text analysis cannot be based on keyword analysis. Must be a semantic analysis. And the combination of two different artificial intelligence tools. The first one that can produce the semantic parameters that are important for you for this type of goal, could something that can create the best condition for the second step, for the machine learning prediction. Okay, so our experience is that the different nuances you can find out in a text is not something that you can manage with a statistic heuristic approach. Okay, you have to prepare the data. And again, we are still considering which semantic parameter we have to use, because now we have gathered all the semantic parameters and we have ingested inside Weka. Probably we have to select them in a different way, and probably we have to weight with different value the semantic parameter I showed you before. But no way from considering our experience, my opinion is that it's a really, really challenging task, and you must to face it combining different technologies. Honestly speaking, we should try to increase the training data set with more than 60 texts for each Darkweb accounts, and then we can understand more. But the first result is something that I consider very positive to understand more about this type of application.
I guess that we have another question from the audience. Yes?
Thank you for your presentation. I'd like to ask two questions. One is, how did you get the samples or data set? So you need some a lot of data set for machine learning. So that's why actually it's very difficult to correct answer, correct data set. So how did you? How many?
In this specific situation, we have used a Darkweb gather search engine that acquired the different text issued by the 3 different people we have focused on. Okay, so it could be also manually copy and paste if you want, but in this case we have set up a crawler for acquiring documents. It is not so easy to find out many texts in the dark web, because as you have completely understood, the volume, the length of the text is important, okay? So this type of techniques, stilometry, works better if you have long text. If you have just few words, it's not so simple to identify your style of writing.
Yeah, I know. But I'd like to ask, how did you get samples or data set?
We crawl the sample from the dark web.
But it's not so, how do you say, you imagine or estimate something, but you need some correct ones.
Yeah. We consider a blog present on the dark web, where the free accounts posted the text, okay?
But
And so
he declares the man or gender or age.
Sorry. For understanding if he's a man or if he's 30, 40s, 50s, and so on, we have another sample text. Okay, we have 3 different training data. One for understanding sex, and here we have more text that we know that are produced by 20 years old guys or 50 years old guys, or female and male. And about the free accounts, dark web accounts, we have crawled their content. And we have used other content to measure.
How many did you use number of samples? How many?
60 text for each account. So globally, 180 texts.
For machine learning?
For semantic parameters, and then for machine learning too, obviously.
I would like to ask the whole number of your samples, or...
So considering the free dark web account, 180. Considering sex and ages, 1,000.
Okay. Thank you.
I can suggest, if you would like to get some more detailed information, to talk with Andrea, maybe more in deep, even during our break. So we still have time, 1 minute for one more question, if we had. Yes, see someone in the end of the rear of the room. Just really quick.
So my question is this technique also usable to identify, let's say, fake news or information warfare, and how it would also respond to the machine learning doctored texts, and would it be possible to identify those as well? Thank you.
Very good question. Very good question. We have already implemented this technique for detecting fake news when they are generating automatically by tools. Okay, this is the perfect situation where you have tools that can generate fake news in order to disinformate, and obviously the tools that an algorithm can produce are really well characterized by something that is not the human style of writing text. So this is a typical application of stilometry together with artificial intelligence. Also inside social media intelligence, you can do the same. For example, you have many Twitter accounts where you have simply a nickname, Mickey Mouse 42, and you want to understand if you can find out the model you built using Mickey Mouse tweets is something that you can use in an open source. So you can understand that Mickey Mouse 42 in the open source intelligence is Andrea Melegari, for example. And then you can combine Mickey Mouse 42 with a specific person.
So thank you, Andrea. Really appreciate your dynamic live demo.